Welcome everyone to the final domestic coaching clinic. It's been great the last 4 or 5 weeks to have a variety of different presenters from within our club put forward really good presentations on various different areas, and extremely lucky to have our boys coaching lead Grant Duca up tonight presenting on creating an engaging training environment, and then following him state wheelchair assistant coach Jason Bryant presenting on striving to become a better coach. So 2 interesting topics, 2 different topics. Looking forward to it. First up, the Duke man. I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, mate. Firstly, thank you for having me. There's been some great presentations so far, so hopefully I can follow that up with some good content and go from there. I'll share my screen real quick. Does that come through all right?
Yep, got that, mate.
Cool. All right, so just quickly, like Reece said, I'm the boys coaching lead for Wyndham Basketball, also the youth league coaching head coach for the men's program. I spent about 10 years coaching domestic and another 10 years coaching rep. Some of that overlapped. So a lot of this applies to both, and we'll cover from under 8s through to senior programs. Any questions, shoot them through to Reece, and he'll either interrupt along the way or wait till the end. But I'll get straight into it, if it works. There we go. So the first thing would be to know your role. Mike McKay from Canada Basketball has a saying of who and why equals what and how. Basically, that's who are you coaching and why they're playing. That generally leads into what your goals will be and how you're going to teach and coach that team that season. So for the purpose of this, I'll assume we're coaching domestic basketball. We want to develop the kids' skills. We want to promote active lifestyle. Some of these kids might not want to play rep. They just want to have some fun and be active. But we also want to teach them life lessons and skills and provide a safe environment for them to play. So based on those assumptions, the impact on training is that the environment needs to be competitive and challenging to help the development side of things, but also needs to be fun, varied, and allow for development. And it's easy to say we want to develop kids, but we have to give them the environment to do so. But we also need to make sure that it's fun and it's varied. It's not, I've got to go to training and I've got to get there. Otherwise, the kids don't want to be there. So the main thing is we need to give them an environment that's engaging, that makes the kids want to attend. So on coaches, that means that we need to plan ahead to maximize our time, set the players up in training to get as many reps as possible, teach skills and guide their decision-making, allow the offense to play against defense because we don't play 5-on-0, and we want to be prepared for training to look messy because to get kids to develop and to try things, it will get a bit chaotic at times. So before I get into too much detail, the first thing about planning ahead, I'll only touch on this because Jackie did a whole presentation on it, is a season plan. That might be a bit over the top. That's just a quick one that I've shrunk down for the sake of presenting and showing. But it starts out with setting 3 goals for the season. So for this example, it's to improve a kid's shooting and finishing, teaching them defensive positioning, and how to guide offensive spacing and movement. I tend to split my season up into 3 or 4 sections or phases and try and have each phase a specific part of the goal. So the main thing is you have a plan for the big picture that helps get you where you want to go. And I'm happy to discuss this with anyone after this presentation. But the season plan follows into your session plan. And this is where it gets to be a bit more detail, but it makes everything a lot more engaging. So having the season plan makes this easier, mainly because depending on where you are in your phase and what your goals are, essentially your skills are already selected. So now we just have to go out, pick a few drills, allocate some time, and make sure that the session flows nicely. But what this does is it allows us to maximize our time in the session and it keeps us disciplined in the session. But the main thing is that we want to have a flow there based on the skills we want to teach to follow through and get the players involved. So we want to try and make the most, especially if we only have 60 minutes. That's not much time, as I'm sure you all know, and generally you only have a half court. So you really want to make sure that in that 60 minutes, with that half court, we're making the most of what we can to achieve the goals we want. And I always try and put 3 goals just in here as our session focus. So depending on where you are, 2 or 3 goals for what we want to achieve. So the first thing would be the flow of the session. So early session, we want to prepare our body for exercise. This is generally where we put some skill work in, 1-on-0, maybe 1-on-1. But we want to build confidence with the slower pace as we ease into the session. Then mid-session, which is generally about 10 minutes in or so, depending on the week, we want to start to increase the effort, and we want to start to really focus on the breakdown of the skills and actions that we want to focus on. And this is where we want to start to really implement defense to the offensive drills, or offense to defensive drills, to involve that decision making and the competition side of things. Later in the session, it's a lot more competing, but we really want to make sure that what we've worked on or reinforced is being put in place. So from there, we want to make sure that what we're focusing on transfers into games. So we want our trainings to replicate games. These are the drills from my example, but the main thing is the movements. So in our shooting, they're actions within our motion offense. Breakdowns, they're actually parts of our offense, and shooting off the dribble and driving off closeouts, they are movements and actions that flow within the game of basketball. So all those things there kids want to do. So that's where some fun comes in, but it's still competitive, it's still skill development, and it's still engaging. And as we start to add defense, it means that there's less waiting. So there's also decisions and reads, the use of both offense and defense in most of these drills. And there's breakdowns from our offense, and it doesn't have to be off-numbered. It can be 2-on-1, 3-on-2, 4-on-3 to give the offense the advantage. It can be 2-on-2, 3-on-3 to make it more level, but it can be 2-on-3 or 3-on-4 to give the defense an advantage, depending on what your focus is. And small-sided games, Kyle had a good presentation on that as well, where all those things make kids want to be there, but it transfers into games. Now, some rules of teaching and coaching is basically just teaching with the sport. Everything on this slide is credit to Mike McKay. His presentation on this got me really thinking about teaching. So a maximum of 3 keys at a time. I try and bring that into my session plan as well, that I want to try and focus on a maximum of 3 things per training, as in general big concepts. But for every drill you run, you want to try and have 3 keys. So if it's just a transition layup drill, you'd probably have, pass on time and on target, eyes up, and finish high off the glass. That's it. You want to have a max of about 10 minutes per drill. Otherwise, it starts to get a bit boring and kids start to lose interest. And you have about 30 seconds to start each drill. And this one's the toughest one, but this is one that, on reflection, probably makes it easier to coach by giving them a quick, this is what we're doing, this is where we're starting, let's get out and go. And then along the way, we can maybe stop them and give them a bit more detail, max of 30 seconds, or guide them along the way so that we're not wasting any time. He also had a concept of TLC, which means teaching, learning, and competing. And every drill is essentially one of these. There's teaching drills, which you can stop at any time. It's generally early in the season or teaching a new skill or concept, but it's where you stop, teach a few things, and then get them back out there. But then there's the learning drills, and that's where you want to coach on the fly. You don't want to stop them. You just want to use reminders, talk when they're out of play. You want to be quick. You want to get them back out. You want them to learn by doing. And then there's the competing drills, and that's where possible. You want to treat them as if they're games. You really want to try and use timeouts or subs to teach, and you want to try and get them involved. Now, some considerations. probably the most important thing, like I said, is maximize time. You want to use both sides of the floor. Be prepared. Balls will fly everywhere. It'll be messy, but it reduces waiting time and it gets kids moving. And that's what they're there for. They don't want to bring a ball to training, see a hoop, see the floor, and have to hold the ball and wait their turn. If we can get them moving, playing, that's all they're there for. That's what they want to do. And that's what will keep them engaged. We want to play both parts of the game because it's offense and defense. And decision-making is a learned skill. So you really want to try and have players reading the defense and create a good offensive decision. But we also want defense to react to our offense, and all that we can do at once. There are times for isolating, but most of the things we do wrong in games are because we're not prepared for the defense or offense to do what they do, and then we're scrambling and we make mistakes. Sorry. One of the biggest considerations, though, which might cause some people to be annoyed, is to try and avoid punishments. Basically, why are they needed? If a kid's acting out or, being annoying or whatever the situation is, we have to think why. Most of the time, it's because they're bored, they're waiting. So we need to find ways to keep them engaged. Now, if they're just in a, poor mood, yes, you can sit them out, but we need to know why things are happening. Other times it's mistakes, and we tend to punish people if they miss 2 shots in a row or something. Now, if we're competing and we're setting a score and a target kind of thing, that's fine, 2 push-ups, get back in. But if they're making mistakes because of decisions, then we need to think of how to teach differently. And that's on us as coaches. So sometimes we can just pull a kid aside and say, what's the issue here? You've made this decision a couple of times, but let them tell you. So you have to give them that feeling of comfortability to actually talk to you. But listening to how they understand or see things will allow you to see how you need to tackle that back. I know some coaches, they like to punish people for fitness and toughness, but it wastes time. We can incorporate fitness into drills, so it's kind of a cop-out. But yes, I understand there are times and places, but if you only have 60 minutes a week, there's more important things to do with our time. So some golden rules for training, which real quickly would just be to maximize your time. So we don't want to waste any time, hence the punishments. We want to try and limit our talking, which is that 3, 10, 30 rule from Mike McKay. That's crucial. We just want to get in, get out on the court and play. If we can use left and right of the floor at once, work everything, we're just making the most of our time and get kids as many reps as they can. We want to create an environment for development. We want players to want to learn and grow. And most of them, that's what they're there for. But competing makes the boring stuff fun. So by putting them in a situation where they're learning the skills, they're developing, but they're competing, it just brings that stuff that might be boring, like ball handling at times, to be a bit more fun because, Johnny's trying to beat Bob and then he wins. So then Bob wants to beat Johnny. So bringing that competition in can make it a bit more fun, but it is a learned skill and it does transfer into games. So we want to create an environment to develop and to compete. And then transfer into games is key. So skills are learnt in drills and stuff, but they're truly learnt and understood in small-sided games and competitive play. That's where they understand how those skills actually work in a game. And that's where the decision-making aspect is crucial in their development. So that's probably the main thing to keep in mind when we're talking about training, that it's about the timing, it's about the environment that we're working with, and it's about thinking why kids are basketball training, and it's to get them into the game. So they'll want to be there if they can get the most out of it. So with my my example training session is we have the early session, which with ball handling and dribbling. It's easily, easing the bodies into training, teaching some fundamentals. It is a bit boring, so there's different aspects we can do. But it gets them in the mood, gets them focused. But then we get to the mid-session where we start to focus on our shooting and our driving. And this is where, the drive, kick, extra, shooting and driving off a closeout, all that's from our defense. So they're learning the skill within the flow of the game. Then we can have a halftime, which, I sometimes use quarter times and timeouts throughout training, where we huddle up on a bench or on the sideline like we would in a game. And it just teaches some of those things and it keeps training similar to the game. We go through a quick review of the first half. Like, look, the shooting's not quite there today, but the passing to the shooter is what's holding us back. So when we get out in the second half and we do some breakdown, let's make sure our passes to the shooters is better. Let's get it to where they want the ball. Then later in the session, we go into more competitive play, into our breakdowns. I'll put 20 minutes, which is more than 10, but within that 20 minutes will be variations of 2-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-2, where the defenders are placed. But the movements replicate our offense and it will flow from what's happened beforehand. There are decisions or reads we have to make against the defense. And we're competing against ourselves. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, that when we go through 4-on-0 or 3-on-0, 5-on-0, it's boring. Kids aren't creative anymore. They don't imagine the defense. So how they play is generally a reflection of how they train. And if they're training against nobody, when it comes to games, they'll struggle, because when there's 5 kids that just want to steal the ball and go the other way, and I've got the ball and I'm not used to someone trying to swipe off me, it puts me in a bad spot. So that's how I kind of flow things for my session. And that's about it, really, Reece. Do we have any questions along the way?
Thanks, Grant. I might just get you to stop sharing your screen.
Yep.
Cheers. Thanks for that, mate. Great stuff. I've got one to come, and then I've got a couple from coaches. So
yep.
You spoke a lot about planning and being detailed and things like that. What if during your session you can tell the athletes are lacking engagement or whatever's not working? Do you recommend that coaches really stick to the plan and just push through, or do you look to change it on the run and modify? What do you sort of recommend there?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to when it's not working, why it's not working. If the drill's too complex for the kids, then, you put that plan together, you know what you're trying to get out of it, whether it's the catch and shoot aspect, the reading of a closeout, whatever it is. And then it is tricky, but on the fly, we have to make a change and we go to a more simplistic drill. But if it's the concept of the closeout or reading the closeout, then we say, all right, let's hold it and just isolate the closeout and read and build on that. The plan should be for the concept more than the exact drill, but they're just to guide you so that if things go well, that's what we do. And I tend to make notes after each session just to see how, what did and didn't work.
Cool. So during the session, you might just, tweak the drill, change the drill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
But I try to allow the time that I've allowed for each concept to still be designated to that concept where possible.
Yep. No, makes sense, mate. Makes sense. Al McCautry, you happy to ask your question, mate?
Yeah, mate. Hey, Grant. Just given you're on a limited time and the level of athlete could be varied from within any team, probably more pronounced at domestic level. Is there a management of matchup in relation to keeping your competitive session going? For instance, if you've got a dominant player and he's playing against one of the not so strong athletes, how do you go with that within keeping him engaged, or do you manage the matchups like for like, or do you just it's everyone against everybody? Have you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, it does get tricky when you're trying to get your more 3-on-3 competitive side of things, because you do have, you might have a kid in under 14s who's 6 foot and the rest of the team is significantly smaller. So in those aspects, I try and get the player to see why they're there. If they're there just to dominate, then, they're not going to get too far. But if they're there to try and develop, it's an easier sell to say, look, you're bigger and stronger right now, but that's just against this team. You know, on Saturday or whenever your game is, that these kids we're going up against are your size. They might be bigger. So let's work on the skill and not just overpowering anyone. But where we can, if we're lucky enough to be able to go one-on-one and be quite balanced, I always try and split the team, because I think the competitiveness that comes out naturally will push the kids a bit stronger. Does that kind of answer the question?
No, it does. Thanks, mate.
Cool. No worries.
Thanks, Grant. A little bit different question to the topic, but I'll get Adam Voigt to ask his question for you.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. That was good. But as Reece said, a slightly different question than the topic you were presenting on, but interested in your thoughts.
Yep.
So do you believe that we should make an individual within the team a captain and give some greater responsibilities within the training sessions, or do you think it's best to leave them all kind of on an even keel?
That is a different one, but I do like it. I guess that depends on kind of the start, where I touched on your role, but also the team's makeup of the team, I guess. So if you're in a lower division, younger age group, you know, I've tried with younger groups rotating a captain. So having a captain or two for 2 weeks and then rotating every couple of weeks to give them some leadership opportunities. And in trainings, I just basically say that means you're the ones setting the tone. You're the ones that if you see someone slipping down, you help them up, and you're the one that needs to stay positive, just to teach them some of those skills. If it's an older group, a more experienced group, I tend to try and have something a bit more stable and consistent. But I guess it depends on, like I said, each team's a bit different. Last season for Youth League, for example, I had a captain that was a set captain for the season, but he delegated some of his role and, you know, he let other guys be involved. Not every season you need a captain. It really just comes down to your thoughts on the team and, how you see best fit. But I don't think there's a set answer.
Okay. Thanks, Grant.
No worries.
Thanks a lot, coaches, and thanks, Grant. Really good presentation with some great points and great takeaways to sum up on, and for coaches to build on and take points from some of the other presentations. So thanks so much for that, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Now throw to Jason Bryant, presenting on striving to be a better coach. Jason is a really good guy, really hard-working coach. I mean, people probably don't know how much time he puts into the game. He's probably in a unique position where he's coaching a lot in the wheelchair basketball space and heavily investing in trying to progress along that pathway, but also coaching rep basketball and has coached a lot of domestic. And Jason certainly, in the last couple of years, tried to invest a lot in improving himself on both streams, and that's why I think he's a great guy to get to present and talk about how you can try and get better. So I'll let you take over, mate.
Thank you. Again, as Grant said, thanks for the opportunity. I think we've had some really good presenters on over the last 4 weeks, I think it is. So hopefully I can do it some justice by finishing out in a appropriate way. So I'm just going to share my screen. All right, I assume that's up and running now.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, Reece asked me to do this. I think part of it's punishment for me banging on about stuff I've been doing, because we've been doing a bit of stuff together over the last couple of months with the online things on Thursday nights. So I'm going to try and compress down becoming a better coach into a short presentation. I think it's one of those areas where we could delve into a million different topics and talk for days about it. But I just thought I'd focus a little bit on the practical side of it and just sort of tie that back to what I've been doing for the last few years. So Just a bit about me, if I actually click the thing to flick it forward. So I started playing junior basketball in Traralgon many years ago. Billy Accarlo suggested it was the 1800s when I showed him a photo of me the other day, but it was more like the late 1970s, early 1980s. So I played rep basketball, or what we called rep, which was our squad basketball, playing intertown basketball on Sundays. As I got to sort of the top part of that in 18s and stopped growing, I started coaching because the other kids kept growing. And then I think I went to uni and I sort of stepped away from it. I kept playing, but I didn't have a lot of involvement in coaching for a long time. I came back, I think probably like a lot of us did who have kids when they started playing. So my oldest son, Rawley, started playing under 10s and I came back to coaching then. And I think I went to his first training session. A couple of the parents sussed me out, and the next week I was the assistant coach with one of the guys, Rowan, who's in our rep program now. So that was roughly 6 years ago. I currently coach 14-4 boys at Wyndham Basketball, which is my oldest son's team. I've coached 12 boys and 12 girls the last couple of years. As Reece mentioned, I wish I was currently the assistant coach with the state junior wheelchair team, but we're still not sure that'll ever happen this year. I'm also, again, wishing I was an assistant coach with the Kilsyth Women's National League team this year, but that also is looking like it's not going to happen. And the one thing that is going to happen is I need to get out of bed at 5 o'clock on Friday because the actual network training stuff's starting back up, and I'm assistant coach with one of the network coaches of the Australian senior team. So that's been a really good opportunity. So I've stolen something here. Oh, sorry, this first slide. Sorry, I tell a lie. I did a quick search on Google because I was sort of thinking, well, what do we actually do as coaches? And I think one of the things that becomes clear very quickly is we do a whole lot of things, and we have a lot of roles. We deal with a lot of people. And I think if I said to everybody on here, how many are on here, everybody think of a word, like what we do as a coach, think of one word and write it down. We could probably add another 16, 20, 50 words to that really quickly. But I think what it shows is that coaching as a sort of discipline is a fairly broad undertaking. And there are a lot of different skills and areas that we need to sort of focus on and try and be good at. First thing I've done is I stole something that Reece sent around because A, I think it was good, and B, I think it sets the scene a little bit. So he sent this out a few weeks ago to a few of us. It's like, what areas of knowledge are there in coaching? What do we need to know? And I liked this chart because I think it shows the different areas that we need to sort of be capable in, but also how they all overlap. Now, Reece said it was someone else, but that's him as the little star hovering in the air in the middle. But interpersonal, so how we work with others, primarily the athletes, but it's also parents, other coaches, different people we encounter, referees, etc. Intrapersonal, which is understanding ourselves and how we behave and making sure we behave in a proper manner. And then professional, or like our actual practical skills and knowing the game. And that's really what I'm going to focus on today. So I'm just going to go through basically a few things that I've found. I've stolen a lot of this, obviously, because I think as coaches, we're great borrowers. We tend to find things that other people do and then take them and change them a bit and make them our own. And I think that's one of the best things about it. So how do we get better as coaches? I sort of started thinking about this, and I think there's some fundamental ideas or fundamental attributes that we need to have to be able to actually improve, specifically with coaching. So I think the first one is make a commitment to what we're doing. So we turn up to training each week. Maybe we're just domestic coaches, not just domestic coaches. We are domestic coaches, which is what I've done a lot of. We turn up to training. We have an expectation that our kids come and they're prepared and they do the right thing. And I think that we need to lead by example and be professional and show a commitment to what we've done, that we've planned properly and that we're organised in what we do. And I think the other thing is we need to always remember the impact that we have on, especially the younger junior athletes. I think that sometimes we forget just how profound an impact we can have on these kids, and that we need to do the best job we can to make sure that we give them the right environment. have a learning mindset. So we're all students of the game, and the game's always changing. One thing I did discover when I came back from having a fairly long break from coaching is there was more than just 3 zone offenses that were around, because I'm pretty sure that's all we ever did when I played rep. But understand that basically it's a learning journey and it's never going to end, pretty much. And I think, like, for example, Alan McCourtry's on here tonight. He's a wealth of experience, yet he's on here and he's looking for, I guess, ideas and things to take away, like we all do all of the time. The other one I thought is important was be true to yourself. So you don't have to copy what other coaches do. You can develop your own philosophy and style. And I think know why you're coaching. Like, be settled with yourself why you're coaching, and depends on what level, you know, irrespective of the level or the age group. It's important that you take what you see other people do and you turn that into a thing that works for you. So how do we get better as coaches? And like I said, I've sort of tried to focus on more the practical side of things. So I'll call it professional development, you could call it skills development. But so I think the first thing, and this is probably the thing that for me over the last 6 or so years has helped the most, is watching and talking to other coaches and asking questions. I think when I first started back, I had I was assisting with under 10 B grade boys, and I helped out and I was working with another coach. And then I got my own team, as you tend to in domestic clubs. If you show even a sniff of interest in being a coach, you are one straight away, basically. But I was lucky enough that I had a quite experienced coach that was training, I think it was 14 girls. Straight after my session in the school we were training in, and I started hanging back and watching what he was doing and, you know, asking him questions, and he was really good, and he'd get the girls to run some drills and he'd show me different things, and I'd sort of take bits and pieces of that, because some of what they could do, my boys couldn't do. So I think that time that you spend watching other coaches is critical. I think I started going to Friday night games, and I think if you go to a Friday night rep game or a Friday night set of rep games, like on Saturdays, I think on any given day, there's people walking around the stadiums that have an absolute wealth of knowledge and experience. And I was thinking the other day, like at Wyndham, people probably don't know, but there's people walking around that have been state coaches, that have worked with Australian national junior teams, that are big V coaches. I mean, there's obvious ones like Reece and the people that we sort of see on our teams now, but there's other people there that have been around for a long time. And I've never found, or very rarely found, a coach in basketball that's not happy to talk about basketball with you. So I think staying back, watching those training sessions, you know, spend some time on a Sunday morning, get down and watch some rep sessions, hang around after your session and watch big V training like I used to, annoying Reece all of the time. There's a lot to be gained from that, and there's a lot that you can take away. But also I think one good thing is that it actually shows you, and it's great for the kids too, that reinforces that working on fundamentals and the stuff that you do. You think, you know, I'm down here in under 10s and we're working on dribbling and we're working on cross-up moves and stuff, and then you look at the senior players and they're doing the same things. So it's good to see that, get some validation around how you sort of are going about things, and see that sort of maintains through the age groups. Seeking feedback. I was reluctant to do this at the start, I must admit, but the other side to going and watching other people train is asking people to come and watch you train. And I think that if you know some people or some other coaches, it will give you a straight up appraisal of things, or like a good constructive feedback, then that's an invaluable thing. I know on Sunday mornings when I'm coaching my rep teams, there's a few of the other coaches that are starting a bit later because they're lucky enough to have 16s and up that don't start till 9:30. But quite often they'll sit on the bench, watch a bit, have a bit of a chat afterwards, and I always value that, and I take a lot away from that. And I think it's important to be prepared to get that feedback and to get that constructive criticism and to get those new ideas. And I think Corey's on this call now. He often calls by my trainings on a Sunday and has a look and gives me a few tips here and there. And I always find those things really welcome or really useful. So read, watch and listen. So I think one of the things that we are blessed with at the moment, to the point that we're almost saturated with it, is there is a countless amount of information that you can find online or in print or in audio form to learn about basketball. So I think podcasts, books, there's YouTube clips and training sessions. You could just sit there and watch them for the rest of the year and you'd still not run out. So I think finding those things and those coaches or people that you follow or listen to or read that work for you, that sort of, tick the boxes for what you're trying to do, is an important thing. And I think I sort of never know what to read or what to listen to, and I tend to ask people. I know I've asked Grant and Reece recently about books and podcasts and bits and pieces, but certainly things like the Basketball Victoria Talking Split podcast and things like that, they're resources that are there. And I always look at these things and think, well, if you take one thing out of it and there's one learning or one trigger that makes you maybe think about things differently, then I think it's a valuable undertaking. I always work on the one rule for anything I ever do. If I get one thing out of it, then it's been worthwhile. And like I said, I think the trick with that's trying to sift through it all and just find what works for you. Probably one of the things that has helped me the most was attending, but more coaching in clinics. So I know that wherever you run a lot of, or we have run, and I assume that will start back up again when life starts to return to something like normal, but we're running a lot of sort of domestic coach development clinics, and Reece had been running them on a Sunday night, and I'd been to a few. I think that they're invaluable resources to go along to. And I know often there are times that are not ideal, but unfortunately the rest of our ideal times we're normally playing basketball and coaching. So we've got to find those times when we're not. But I think getting around other coaches, listening to things, having a chat afterwards, talking to people, building that network, there's a lot to be taken away from that. And I think the second part of that, and probably the thing for me that I did that has been almost the single most valuable thing for my own development, was I actually went and helped out and coached in clinics. Right back when they started, or when I first became aware of what they call DDP at Wyndham, the Domestic Development Program, Reece sent out an email and he said, if any coaches are interested in coming, well, they're more than welcome. And I hit him up, and I think I coached in that for maybe, 4 or 6 terms. I can't recall really, but that was fantastic because it was great for my own development. I got to work with boys and girls from basically beginner level through to under 18s. I got to work with different coaches. I got to work with big V imports that we had and get to know them. And I think that there's so much to be learnt in that environment where you're working with other coaches on court, and you've got kids of all different ages, and boys and girls, because there's certainly nuances to all of those different things. It's just a really good opportunity. So I'd recommend, if anyone ever has the chance to participate in those types of things, to take that opportunity. At least give it a try. Maybe you can only do it here and there. Maybe you do it once and it's not for you. But I think to take on board those chances or those things that come your way and sort of make the most of them. Another one I wasn't very good at, and possibly I'm still not very good at, but I try to be good at it or better at it, is self-reflection. I think it's really important. And I heard Grant say in his presentation before that he makes notes after training sessions. I think we put a lot of time into planning what we do at training and thinking about the sorts of things we want to achieve. And as Alan asked Grant earlier, like sometimes you go about, you have a great plan, you go to do it, and it just doesn't come off for some reason. I think the worst thing you can do is just go, oh, well, that was a rubbish training, and then walk away and then come back the next week and then off you go again. I think it's important to sort of look back at how we've coached in games, how we've run our trainings, and say, okay, well, what worked well, what didn't work well, why was that, what things can I do different next time to sort of help improve things. I hate running a bad training session. It's one of the worst feelings I have. Is it's worse than losing games for some reason. Like I go to training because there's no reason why it shouldn't be successful most of the time. And I think it's important to have a chat. I always talk to my assistant coach afterwards about what we did and just talk through, how the boys were, whether they're up or down or things like that, and to look at that, look at sort of taking away from that the learnings and trying to feed them back into next week. So, and the other one, I think there's formal accreditation things we can do. I know that we run level 0 courses at Werribee semi-regularly, and hopefully, again, that will come back when things start coming back to something like normal again. But I did my level 1 a number of years ago, and at that time, I think I went down to Mentone Grammar with one of the guys at the domestic club I was at. And again, that was another opportunity to sort of go back to the first point where we got on court. We had Bill Runchy, who was a really experienced coach, and I think he used to play in the NBL, and his claim to fame was he had the highest fouling average of anyone ever in the NBL at 4.5 or something per game. But those coaching courses and those coaching clinics, I've met people there that I've stayed in contact with. And I think my level 2 more so because it takes longer to actually get through it. I think we did it over a month or something every Sunday. But I think going and doing these accreditations is good. It's not for everybody, but I think certainly things like the level O, where I actually think it's free, and I'll stand to be corrected on that, but they're just good things to go get exposure to some senior coaches, get exposed to different drills and different ways you can think about teaching, and take away from that sort of as much as you can. So I think underpinning all of that, and I didn't specifically say it, but be around other coaches, like be around good people and good coaches. I've been able to do some things because a number of years ago, Reece rang me up and said, "Do you want to coach wheelchair basketball?" And I said, "I don't know anything about wheelchair basketball." And he said, "That's okay." I think after the first 2 weeks, I wish I hadn't have said yes, but I think after a little bit longer, I started to get the hang of it. And I think the best thing that's come from that for me is that it forced me almost back to the start. So when I came back to coaching, I thought I knew heaps. And then about one season later, I realized I didn't know much at all. And then I got back to the point where I thought I knew a reasonable amount. And then I delved into the wheelchair world and realized that here I am starting again, basically. Obviously, a lot of how we coach and how we relate to people and those sort of soft skills are the same, but wheelchair basketball is definitely a different beast, and it's taken a lot of learning and a lot of going to other training sessions like I've talked about here, going to MSAC at 6 a.m, driving all over the place, driving to Kilsyth when there's been wheelchair rounds on and things like that, to actually get in and watch games and to see other coaches and talk to them and do those sorts of things. So, and I think the other thing is, if there's things you want to do or things you want to be involved with, then just ask. There's plenty of people around that are more than happy to have you at their trainings, that are happy to help you out, discuss things. But most of the things that I've sort of been doing in the last couple of years around wheelchair basketball have all come from me pursuing them. So no one hands it to me. I got the opportunity to get involved with it, which I took, and then I had a really good opportunity to go to the Nationals as a development coach, basically, for the tournament. And I got asked to go for one day and went for all four or five. I can't recall how many it was, 4, I think. But and again, that was an opportunity to just sit and talk to people and immerse yourself in the sport. So I think, like I said at the start, there's very rarely a time you'll encounter a person that's not going to want to talk to you about basketball if they love the game. That's what we all do. We just sit around talking about it all the time. So I'll try and wrap up, I guess. I don't want to bang on for too long because I don't have fancy charts and things to show like Grant did. But I just think in summary, like to just some basic points. I think be a learner. I think that being a coach is undertaking a lifelong journey of learning. And I think that all you've got to do is look at senior coaches. You listen to NBA coaches in podcasts and things like that. They're all still learning. They're all visiting each other and saying, how do you do this? How do you do that? The game changes. It evolves all of the time. It's always going to evolve. You know, as soon as we get on top of being masters of pick and rolls and things that are popular now, will change and something else will become in vogue, and we'll have to learn how to do that. Be passionate. So I think leading by example, really. I think we look for that passion, and we can help instill that in the kids by embodying that ourselves. I think most of us, if we're there for the right reasons, we're there because we want to help the kids, especially in domestic situations where we're coaching juniors. We just want to help them get better. And I think my main goal in domestic is I just want the kids to leave the end of the season better than they started. And for me, that's success. So find what's right for you. So I think it took me a while to work through this myself, but find the things that you like to listen to and read. Find the sorts of people that you like to talk to. Find the sorts of basketball you like to watch. You know, a lot of us watch the NBA and things like that, but there's not that much that we're taking out of the NBA and then taking to under 12 boys training midweek for domestic Saturday games. So I think it's go and find the things that you can learn from and you can take away from, be that clinics, be that video you watch, be it books, be it talking to other coaches. And I think the last point is probably the most important one. And I think that's the reason we're all here on a Monday night, is because just love the game. You know, we talk about it nonstop and we do things just because we love being around the game. And I think that's the thing that drives us. And I think that's the thing we need to make sure probably stays at the forefront of everything we do, and certainly the things that we try and instill in the kids that we work with. And that is it from me. So hopefully I didn't put too many people to sleep.
No, it was great, mate. Very good. Very, very good. I think, you know, not every coach is going to go as all in as you have, possibly, but certainly they can take some of those pieces, and if they just do one of those things, stay around and watch another experienced coach, or ask them for feedback, or listen to something else, or read something, like just one of those things alone will help them a bit, and then that might inspire them to dive a bit deeper. So I think that's a great framework to start from. I think I sort of summed it up as you were going through it and had been thinking about it. I think Jason has been a great opportunity taker in his coaching. You know, the wheelchair basketball is a perfect example, in the sense that he got a call and had never thought about it, and we just needed a coach to help coach wheelchair, and he jumped into it. So you've got to be an opportunity taker, but it's not enough to just do that. You've also got to be an opportunity maker. And I think he's also, you know, striving to do that now, and he's happy to bail up coaches and ask, can he help out, or can he do this? And, you know, you might get told no, and you've got to be okay with that, or there's not a spot, or whatever. But, you know, he's certainly willing to do that as well. So I think being an opportunity taker and maker is certainly key to that, and something I've taken away from your presentation, mate. So I thought it was really good.
Cheers. I absolutely have been told no, so don't have any misgivings about that.
That's right. No, you've got to be willing to. It's part of it. But every no, you're one closer to a yes, I guess. So, Marvin, you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can also see you.
You're not going to Marvin, you're not going to bail me up on session about domestic coaching, are you?
No. It was. No, thanks for that. It's really informative, and it touches good points as to being a domestic coach. In regards, like when I started as a domestic coach, I struggled to identify my coaching philosophy. You touched on that in the slide, and also how important it is to seek and develop networking, and how important is mentoring to develop.
Yeah, I think I was the same with philosophy. I kept hearing it as a word, and I flippantly say from time to time I hate the word. And I think what that is a reflection of that I actually struggle to formulate what mine actually is. And I think part of that reason is that it keeps changing, or that as I go further on, I think I refine it, or I sort of simplify it back to some reasonably basic things. And I think that so yeah, that's the one on philosophy. I just think that it's a hard one because everyone says, "Oh, what's your coaching philosophy?" And there's 400,000 different answers on the internet about what they actually are. But again, I think really what it comes down to is what's important to you and what are the things that you're looking to do and the things that you're looking to instill in your teams. And I think your philosophy sort of underpins that. And networking wise, I think I used to just sort of lurk around trainings, and then I sort of somehow, Reece is laughing because I used to lurk around his all the time because he was straight after my 12 boys. But I think at some point in time, someone will sort of reach out and just say, this is what I was doing. And I know, like, I worked with the senior men's team as an assistant for a part of last season. Once the nationals were finished, I came back and I sort of wanted something else to do because spare time for some reason doesn't seem like something I enjoy. But and I'd been going to sitting and watching men's training because they were training after something I was doing. I can't remember what it was. And it was one of, I think it was Mike, the assistant. He just started talking to me and telling me and explaining things that they were doing. And I thought that was sort of where I think I said to Reece a while ago, at some point in time, I realized that if you ask these people these questions, they're not going to bite your head off. And sometimes you are intimidated by some of the senior coaches. I was lucky enough to go to the AIS to a camp where all of the senior coaching sort of staff were there. And I was sort of reluctant to ask him anything until one of the guys that had been a gliders coach for years and an Olympian himself just sat down and started talking to me. I thought, well, actually, you know what? He isn't some kind of scary guy. He's just a guy. I think that talking to people and building the network up, I think find the people that, you know, you get along with. We don't all get along with each other. It's just how life goes, but you do get along with some people and you click. And I think exchanging those ideas and having those conversations really help in bringing you along. And I hope in some way that actually addressed what you just said.
Marvin, yep.
Marvin's gone to sleep. That's how interesting an answer it was.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's what. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, philosophy is a hard one. I agree on that 100%. And I think generally the more simple you can get it to, the better. A lot of the really great coaches can somewhat sum up their philosophy holistically in just a sentence or two. So it doesn't have to be this long written, thesis that's 8,000 words or anything like that. It can be very short and concise, and often the more concise, the better it is. And it's okay to struggle with it. I think we all struggle with it. I mean, I think I certainly still struggle with, well, what's exactly my philosophy and bring it back to it. But it is an important process to go through, writing down, why you coach and what you want to achieve in those things and how you're going to attack that. I think it's important. And the mentoring and networking is definitely key. And it also gives you some friendships and some things like that make being involved in the game as a coach even more important. It's people you can share the losses with, share the wins with, all that sort of stuff as well.
Absolutely.
So, definitely great question, really good answer, and overall, great presentations from both Grant and Jason. Thanks to all the coaches that tuned in, and a massive thanks to the other 8 coaches that have presented as part of this series. It's been a really great initiative and great to see the what the coaches have been able to put forward. It's been, rather than just be me and I put myself up every week, I thought, let's try and engage some of the up and coming or aspiring coaches within, and we've got plenty, and there could have been others. We've got a lot of great coaches, as Jace touched on, but really proud of what the coaches have put together. So thank you to all now 10 of them, and thanks to everyone else for tuning in. We'll put this up online. We'll have 10 great clinics for domestic coaches to be able to review before they start, if they start next season or whenever, and they'll be there for years to come on the website. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you on court, because we're back.